Welcome. You're tuned to the Urban Affairs program. It's time to get up for Urban Perspectives with your host, Pete Rhodes.
Welcome to this Urban Perspective Community Roundtable. I'm Pete Rhodes, your host. On this show, we will be discussing Northside community projects, safety, outreach effectiveness, as well as business development. I have two very special guests here with me today. Mr. Louis J. King. He is the president and CEO of Summit Academy, OIC, as well as Michael Rainville, who is a Northeast Business Association board member and candidate for the Third Ward. Recently, gentlemen, 2021 data on North Minneapolis crime shows that homicides increased 64%, robberies up 30%, and aggravated assaults up by almost 10% compared to the same time period in 2020. So I'll start off with you, Mr. King, as a frontline professional working in the North Side community. How have you seen ongoing racial disparities and COVID-19, as we're in a pandemic year, affect safety, jobs, education, these issues in the North Side community?
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here with candidate Rainville, and welcome back. I think that practicing professionals see these developments all together. So there are two events that really kind of pull the covers back on the current situation when we speak about economics. The pandemic showed the difference between the haves and the have-nots, what they call essential workers, those who were put in the worst positions to deal with folks, and or those who were let go, much like the food service industry, because they could not function, while people like us could carry on our business from the comfort of our homes utilizing technology. This also spilled over into our children and education, such things as learning pods or virtual tutors. The poor didn't have that, or many of them are living in households. So we knew this, but it kind of became front and center, and it forced us to stop, take a hard look at it. And out of that too comes opportunity, which after I analyze the situation, I always focus on, well, what do we do with this? How do we move forward? One of the bigger issues though, and this was a serious social justice issue, as you and I know, we used to own homes within walking distance of Cup Foods. And Cup Foods was our corner store at 38th in Chicago. So this wasn't something that we looked at, oh, is that place over there? You and I lived in that neighborhood, right? And Derek Chauvin pulled back the covers on a painful moment. I call it a Birmingham moment, much like when Martin Luther King put women and children at the front of the march, and white America had to watch it on the CBS Evening News. And white America does not have the stomach to see how brutal the system is in enforcing its privilege. And we don't want to talk about this, but it's always there. And so it came front and center. And as a result of that, and I believe in law and order, as you know, I was a soldier for 10 years. Discipline is my thing, but I understand the politics of the mob. And then when that occurred, and we, as I always say to folks, anyone can govern during good times, but you cannot hide your incompetence during a crisis. And we saw that play out in City Hall, and calls like defund and all of this abolish. And so the spike in crime. And who does that impact the most? Well, our children are getting shot, but then suburban kids have been getting shot and killed also. And I have a daughter, Lauren, who you know, who we now tell, don't go downtown. Dinkytown isn't even safe anymore. I'm about to send her off to college next month, and I don't want to send her somewhere where college kids are getting shot on the streets. And so I think that out of these things, we've discovered that none of us are safe if North Minneapolis isn't safe. And We cannot have a collective of people who have no hope, and those boys on those corners are desperate, and therefore we have to work together as a community, business, community activists, and elected officials to create stability, opportunity, and prosperity for all.
I see. Good points. You know, Michael, you are from 5 generations of Rainvilles who have worked and served the city and communities in various positions here of service to the public. You have a campaign slogan, bringing common sense back to City Hall. What is that, your platform about, and what do you see that you hope to be your first priority for change if elected?
Yes, so my family has served, as have many Minnesota families. I think of the Ellison family and how well they've done helping our community. Humphreys, Mondales, it happens, you know, families. I never thought I'd be a politician. I worked for 35 years for the Minneapolis Convention and Visitors Association, creating the economic engine that is downtown, where people felt safe to come downtown. 36,000 jobs are in that hospitality industry within Minneapolis.
Mhm.
And that's why I'm running. So I've retired, and we have to bring jobs back. We have to bring hope back, and we have to heal our city and calm. You know, Louis, I guess I would ask you, I love your analogy about the Birmingham moment. Do you think we have learned a horrible lesson? You know, George Floyd's death, did we learn from that? It was terrible. He should not have been murdered. No one should ever be murdered at the hand of the police. But have we learned? Do you feel that as a community, we can move forward and understand what's needed for social justice and equality?
If I may, none of us would 24 months ago envision a time when we have this interview via Zoom. You couldn't
Mhm.
see that. They took an event, right? I mean, like nobody would think that a germ could stop the world,
Mm.
but it did. And then we found a way to come up out of it. If you said 24 months ago that Keith Ellison and Larry would successfully prosecute a white police officer in Minneapolis, I don't know that people would have bought into that, right? That was just been much too much for folks and then he was convicted and sentenced to prison. I think that would have been much too much for people to comprehend, much as the election of Barack Obama or the Vice President Kamala Harris. So
Mhm.
and I'm a patriot. I spent 10 years as a soldier. I'm a political scientist by training. I think this country is capable of learning. I think this community is capable of learning. It's just that you have to get first past the "no, I'm not an alcoholic" syndrome. I'm not a
So we have
sponsor user.
so we're admitting as a society that we've made mistakes, that racism is throughout our structure, and that's good that we're admitting that, we're
Yeah,
realizing that,
yeah.
and you feel hopeful because of
That's
that.
the first step. All right. That's the first step. You have to admit that you have a problem. All right. And so if we're a country of laws, then for a police officer to be adjudicated in a court of law and found guilty in this matter sets the stage. This isn't an activist or other folks coming. This is a court of law where he was convicted. We have to accept that as fact. So where do we go from here? And then, of course, it enters into the political arena with the caveat that we do acknowledge we need the police. You must have order in a civilized society. If there's anything I agree with Ilhan Omar about, she should recognize what a broken government looks like. All right. She should. That's not the United States of America that we know. So out of this, I am hopeful because A, we had to deal with it, and B, now it's no longer about denying that the police in different ways on different people. We now shift the conversation to reform, and the defund movement is rapidly fading into the shadows.
Well, let me ask you a question in regards to that, because you along with some other, as we keep it on that subject matter, you along with some other faith community leaders have organized what is being called 21 Days of Peace. What is this safety project and how does it work in relationship to what we're seeing in the Northside community around safety?
Certainly. So this is indeed a tale of two cities. One that has economic prosperity, and if you're in the right social networks and oftentimes you're the right race, you can make a lot of money. On the other hand, Black folks are in what I call the misery management machine. Nonprofits, the county, the police, and the courts. All right, that's the business of North Minneapolis. The major industry, 68% of the people are on some type of social service program. Now, when the bullets started flying, though, none of the grants writers or social service nonprofit people took to the corners after those 3 children were killed. The pastors took to the corners. A lady, Miss Howard, Sister Gloria Howard, got shot by a stray bullet. Bishop Howell had a murder in his parking lot during a funeral. Brian Heron was told, "This your last day on the corner. I'm not asking you, I'm telling you." And these people went back. And as a result of that, they began to form relationship with the men out there on the corners. And that relationship continues to build. We're now at day 57 of meeting every morning at 7:30 in the morning. And the guys are asking for jobs. And they're saying, "Yes, ma'am," and "No, sir," and connecting. And the Black church is resuming its place. Your pastor, Chavez Russell, the Black church is resuming its place in society as the leader of the Black community, like the mosque and the Klan, and the Klan in the Asian community, and the Klan in the Somali community. It's coming out. And no one can argue because those people are out on those corners, and the grants writers don't have an answer, and the nonprofits don't have an answer. And so this out of tragedy is now moving us to progress.
Well, Louis, if I can just, and Pete, if I can jump in, this is great news. So the Black church is starting to create the hope, and it does sadden me though that they were threatened to not stand on the corner. Did I hear you right, Louis?
Yeah, but that was just a thing. That was that young man trying to be tough. We know our own tough people. So we sent some folks over to talk to him. And by the next day, Mike, the guy came over and apologized and said, "I was raised better than that." We got a boy up in Brooklyn Park on 63rd and Zane named Billy. He was eyeing him up and down, and my daughter's Asia's up there, Pete, leading that charge. And finally he came over and said, "Can you help me get a job?" And then when Miss Gloria got shot, she was known as the snow cone lady. They came over there and was helping her. And when people started cussing, they said, "We can't talk like that around her." See, so they still respect us, but we've been afraid of them. And we all remember the Lost Boys, and we remember the Lord of the Flies. Well, if you just Lord of the Flies, if you just think about it like that, and then a grown man, this picture behind me, that's chapel at Morehouse College, right? My alma mater. So if we just go there and embrace them, and these people have not gotten one nickel for doing this.
Speaking of which, then, I'm gonna ask both of you gentlemen, what can residents, because now we're talking about people in the community. I'd like both of your opinions on what can residents, representatives from the political leadership, corporations, what can they do to help us improve the situation? Mike, what are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, we have to admit the truth, as Louis said, that we have to make change. The murder of George Floyd was terrible. There is not economic justice. We have to support people like Louis in the jobs creation. Summit Academy, what a wonderful opportunity. And I would like to hear a little bit more about the IT program you started, because that's what we're doing today. We're not in person. We're not getting sick. We're doing this by modern technology. And I understand, Louis, that you have a program for that as well. But what we have to do is we have to again, not only admit that we have to help, but we have to help. We can't just talk. We have to walk the walk, and we have to support the Black churches. I've always felt, Chief Arredondo has spoken so highly of how the Black churches are a great influence, and I serve on his Citizens Advisory Committee. So I've always admired how the Black churches have continuously stepped forward, and now in this big way with the 21 Days of Peace. I think Reverend McAfee, he's a role model. He is walking the walk. He's just not talking, he's taking action. And us as the white community, should the voters elect me, that's what I will have to do. I will have to have concrete action, which at the end of the day, it talks about money. I would have to financially support jobs programs like Lewis, financially support the Black churches.
So when you look at that, Lewis, he spoke to Michael did about the question on institutions like Summit Academy OIC. How have you been able to help the community over these number of years that you've been at the helm over there?
Well, before we go to Summit specifically, let's talk about the formula for change. And you asked, what can citizens do? When we were running the Underground Railroad, white folks who didn't have anything to gain politically, socially, economically helped us, abolitionists, Quakers, etc. We had to run, though, all right? Later, when we were running the Civil Rights Movement, again, Freedom Riders, people were supporting that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So individuals have to choose. When we were running the Underground Railroad, we ran into three guys: the slave catcher, don't be mad at him, he's doing his job; the white guy who would see you but not see you, wouldn't harm you, wouldn't hurt you. The third person was the one we were looking for. And that person would help you, would give you food, give you shelter, etc. And that's been the history of this country. White folks taking risks, getting beat up, doing those freedom rides. I never forget the picture of the young white boy with all his teeth knocked out, bloody, on the freedom rides, doing that thing,
with
right?
John Lewis.
Huh?
John Lewis.
Yeah, with John Lewis, right. And see, we become this microwavable society, and you flip the channel and it's no longer happening, or it's not in the news cycle. No, there are people to this day. I ran a golf tournament a couple of weeks ago. We made $878,000 in one day, all right? That's affluent white people who recognize that the best social service program in the world is a job, and we don't need programs. A man needs to be able to work to support his family, and an unemployed boy is poor marriage material. I have 3 daughters, so we don't get down like that. These people believe, and government does not lead. Not one time in history have you seen government lead in the case of our journey. They take their cues from the white citizenry, and then ultimately the laws and constitution of the country, whether that was Abraham Lincoln or later Lyndon Baines Johnson, on what to do. I think that we're at a moment now, back to Michael's point earlier, where white America has sat up and said, okay, this situation is untenable. So you got the corporates doing their thing, they discovered God again, and you got the government doing its thing, and the people are coming out to do their thing as well. And what Summit does is provide a way for people to leave the misery management machine with no out-of-pocket costs, and in 20 weeks, enter the middle class. I'll close with this. Last week, we got 7 people jobs as app developers with US Bank paying $65,000 a year starting wage. If anybody in their house is making $15 an hour, they're at $95,000 a year. That's called economic freedom. Okay.
Indeed, indeed. Well, when he talked about that, Michael, as you heard, regarding government and how government helps. So with you coming in with the common sense approach to this, how would you see the city government, the city council being more effective in their outreach to situations in North community?
Yeah, so first of all, they have to get along and agree with each other. The tension in those council meetings, it's terrible. And the mayor is the mayor. Who's ever elected mayor, the council has to respect them and work with them, regardless of their feelings. And I just see the city becoming prosperous again with those surplus tax dollars that once we get downtown safe and people coming here to enjoy the stadiums, the museums, those extra dollars can help support programs like Summit Academy and the Black churches. I think we have to embrace the community as elected officials and support those who are doing the real work, like Lewis and the Black churches. And that's common sense. Go to the people that have the results. And Lewis, someday I would hope that I could get a tour. I'm a little busy now running for office, but I look forward to the day that I could actually tour Summit Academy. And maybe we can do that after Labor Day, because I would like to speak with great knowledge of your operation.
Please do. Pete, as you know, I'm a political scientist by training. I served on the school board. I did one term as elected official and said thank you, but no thanks. I have found my way. I don't have the temperament for the legislative process. And I can do the dance, but nah, I like to be in charge. I will say this. When you are in charge of a major metropolitan city such as Minneapolis, you got to know what you're doing, all right? Because you never know when that moment is going to come where we really need skilled people. It's not enough to be a cheerleader. It's not, I always tell my folks, a parrot can say the word, a monkey can do the task, but neither of them understand the underlying principles. All right. And I think we find ourselves today where anyone can govern during good times, but you cannot hide your incompetence in a crisis. And we got hit by several crises all at once. And I think that the people that we have in office today will be great leaders 20 years from now.
20.
20. Yeah, it takes, you don't walk in, anytime we could tell a PX general, because it was a 22-year-old boy that went down and bought a bunch of stars and put him on his uniform, right? You don't get to be a general officer overnight. You got to go through some battles. You got to go through some campaigns. You got to win some, you got to lose some, and you got to survive the political fight. And that's what it takes. And when you emerge out of that, then you're like that grizzled old commander who's seen it before, no matter how it's cloaked today, and he knows exactly what to do about it. He's not afraid of it, and people will follow you. And then we don't have that right now.
Yeah.
Experience matters. And
experience matters.
And Pete, if I can just give you a short answer about my slogan, common sense. To me, common sense is, as you embrace the community, you listen. So you listen to the leaders, you listen to the people who are successful. The elders of our communities are not being listened to, as are the great ideas coming from the neighborhoods. We have to listen to all people to move forward, to create that hope, as Lewis said, to change our city and be a leader for our whole society, our whole country. The leadership can come out of Minneapolis.
Well, I'm having the pleasure of sitting here with two of our leaders in our communities, two different perspectives, Black American and white American. So here's my next question as we prepare to close down this special roundtable. What positive effect, I've heard a few, but what positive effect has the death of George Floyd had on the North Side community? And how can the community, with police, create programs to protect and serve effectively?
So as part of 21 Days of Peace, and this is why I argue that you can't take it in a vacuum, because the battlefield is a multivariate equation. So the chief, when he took office, had 800 officers and he asked for 1,200. Today he has 600. And so he said it'll take him 2 years to get back to 800. So it automatically puts something on the table. What are we supposed to do for 2 years? Power in our homes. All right. So you have to, if you are about the business and you have the moxie and the responsibility to do the job, you have to engage in what I call active citizenship. And so who you see showing up now is much like the American Revolution or the Civil War. You just grab your rifle and you go to the fight.
Mhm.
And so it's mobile. People from uptown are now calling Jerry McAfee saying, we need to sit down. We need to work together. That's unprecedented. So it's bringing different parts of the city together. I'm a member of something called Together Minneapolis. We meet every Wednesday night. These are my Southwest friends. And they too now, they're sharing it. They understand that this isn't happening in isolation. The other good thing that has occurred, and again, after the uprising and the defund the police, everybody's turning and taking a look at the local government going, you know what? Y'all need to go home because you don't know what to do and you're dividing us even further at a time when we need to come together. So the populace, the citizen, the citizenry is raising up. And that's the great thing about this country, that we don't always live up to the promise. And sometimes we're asleep at the wheel, but when the question is really put before us, there are those who will step up and say, I volunteer to meet the challenge. And there are those who will follow them, whether that's to the corner or in the election box, to get us back in a level set position. I think this is a good moment for this city.
Well, Michael, on the other side of the equation, as a white American, what is your position on the positive effect of the George Floyd giving his life? Can the community rally around that during these times of uncertainty and safety issues? Can we work with the police as a community to bring safety to our communities?
Yes, the answer is yes, yes, yes. So George Floyd's death will not be in vain. He will always be remembered as sacrificing his life for a better city, for a better country, and for a better world. Thank goodness that young woman had the wherewithal to videotape that. There isn't a human being alive that can watch that and not be touched emotionally. The first time I saw that, I could not believe it, that someone would be that mean and cruel. So we've learned, we're a country of people who move forward, who change our ways. We've changed many times. I was happy to hear Lewis talk about how Lyndon Johnson and the Great Society, helped a lot. We have to invest money into the Black community. And as a city council member, should the voters send me there, I will be a leader. I've been a leader in my community here in Northeast. I've worked on the team to rebuild downtown. I can make those decisions. I can handle crisis. And I look forward to the opportunity to heal. I think West Broadway has just a tremendous opportunity. Tim Baylor is investing money building there. Don Samuels, Sandra Samuels, there's some great leaders there. And as a council member, I will listen to them. I will listen to Lewis and Pete. You're on the A-list. You're a smart man. And that's what we have to have as a city council that has the common sense to listen to the people that do the work.
There you go. Well, both of you gentlemen have brought great insight into the issues in North Minneapolis. This is a roundtable, so I'm going to hopefully invite you back for a series as we continue to talk about these issues that are important, not only to North Minneapolis, but to South Minneapolis and to all parts of our city. So to those folks who are watching this, we want to thank you for joining us for this special edition of Urban Perspectives Community Roundtable as we discuss North Minneapolis, and particularly in the safety issues, education, and business in that area. I want to thank Louis J. King, President and CEO of Summit Academy OIC, and Michael Rainville, who is a candidate for the 3rd Ward City Council seat and sits on the Northeast Business Association as a board member. I'm Pete Rhodes, and thank you again for joining us here on this special edition of Urban Perspectives. Until next time, stay safe, stay well.